Today I'm setting up my 2026 reading journal, and this is going to be a fairly simple setup. Um, Over the holiday break, I pinched a nerve in my arm, and so I'm not going to try to make this perfect or overly decorative. I'm going to start with pen-only spreads that focus on tracking and some of the key pieces that I want to be able to start using now. And I'll probably add a little embellishment later on if and when I feel like it. So if you're interested in seeing me add more to these pages later on, let me know, or I might just share it in an end of year wrap up. But I didn't want to put this off any further because I wanted to start logging some of my data. Without the decorations, if you like minimal reading journals, more practical spreads, you just want ideas that you can adapt into your own style, this will still be a great video, I'm hoping, to give you some ideas. We can think of this as a foundation, something functional that I can build on rather than a finished product. So for this simple setup, I'm going to be using an Archer and Olive dot grid notebook. So this one has 192 pages. It's similar to the one that I've used before. My last reading journal, I was able to fit about 3 years worth of information in. There were still a couple of pages left, but certainly not enough for this year, so I thought I would start in a new notebook. I also have some bookshelf spreads already printed out that I can cut up and add into here. That's going to save me with some of the hand pain from needing to draw in a book tracker. I'm going to utilize scissors for that, my tape runner, a fine liner, and a ruler to help with some of my straight lines. So getting started, there's always this extra page that, doesn't fully open. It's kind of awkward to utilize. So I do tend to go ahead and glue this together so that I'm starting my journal with a nice spread that I can work with. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So my first page is going to be for the year. Again, for right now, I'm just going to write out 2026. I'm hoping to come back and add some stickers and washi tape and a little bit of scrapbooking collage. I don't tend to go overboard when I'm decorating my journals anyway, but I do like to have a little bit more than just plain black and white for my end product. And I did go ahead and pencil in some rough guides to help me out with this planning. I'm going to go in and erase any pencil marks later on. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and put the pen pieces in. My next 3 pages are going to be for tracking the books that I've read. So I have these printouts. I have one with 52 books and then 2 with 50 books. My reading goal for this year, as it is for the past couple of years, is just 52 books. That means I'm reading 1 book a week, which is very doable. But I have every year the past 3 years gone past that, so I'm going to add in some extra bookcases. But having the first one at 52 books means that I don't have to try to keep count. I can see that as soon as this first bookshelf is filled out, I've hit my goal for the year, and then these 2 will be for any extras. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. Once it's cut out, I'm going to just tape this right onto the page. Usually I would have a bookshelf that's a little bit smaller so I can have a nice header, but this one was a nice ready-made one that I had. And again, I'm just trying to be gentle with myself right now while I'm healing. So this will still work just fine for my needs this year. And then I'm going to repeat the process for my two 50-book bookshelves. There, so now I have my 3 bookshelves taped in, and these were all from Joshie Corin. Usually, as soon as I finish a book, I'll write the name on the spine. I'm thinking this year about adding in a little bit more than just the titles. I was sort of thinking about coloring it either based off of the star rating that I gave it or the format. So whether I read it physically or on my Kindle or an audiobook. I'd love to know in the comments what you do when you're filling in any of these kinds of bookshelves. What color combinations do you pick? I'm just trying to get a better idea this year of some of my reading habits that I haven't tracked in the past. And so I think it might be kind of cool to see a more colorful version. I just haven't fully decided what route I want to go for that. My next spread is going to be for a book graveyard. I'm going to try to give myself more permission to DNF books this year. I have a really hard time doing that. Once I've started a book, I just sort of want to see it until the end, whether or not I'm interested in it. But I am trying to be better about stopping a book and not punishing myself to read it all the way. And that's where a couple of these spreads are going to be related to, are just reading habits that I want to work on this next year. And so I'm hoping having these spreads will motivate me to stick with that. So I'm going to go ahead and make my book graveyard. And on here, I'm going to have tombstones, and I've made them large enough that they can fit a picture of the book that I am DNFing. So I often, for my monthly spreads, will have a photo of the book that I read. So I size these to be able to house that same photo in there. So here I have my book graveyard. I have 12 tombstones here. I can't imagine DNFing more than 12 books, but if I do, I'll just add another spread of this later on in the journal. So the next spread I want to do is for a book bracket in order to pick my top book for 2026. I saw a lot of people doing these in the past 2 years, and I thought it would be a really fun way of setting it up. So again, I'm going to go ahead and draw out some of the rough spots, and then I'll explain how I'm structuring my book bracket. So the layout I decided to go with was one where you compare 2 months at a time. So I'll take my top book in January, my top book in February, and then I'll pick which one I liked the most out of those two. So I'll go from 6 matchups to then going ahead and comparing each of those. So my top one here out of these 4 months will go ahead and move forward. And then this will have 3 books to compare, to pick 2 out of those, and then whittling it down to my top one. I like the brackets more where you're doing a more even number, so not needing to go from 3 books to 2 books. But I did like how this layout looked for this size notebook and the size of the pictures that I can print out for my book covers. So I thought I would give it a try, compared to the ones where you've got some months on either side and then more evenly move towards the middle. If I don't love this format this year, I'll just try something new next year. It's a great thing that you can just keep changing up how you're handling this. And then I have little marks for where I'll go ahead and place the pictures as I move forward. Again, when I get around to decorating it, I might color in some frames or do a little bit of decoration. I'm not totally sure yet, but at least I have the structure marked down now. So my next page is going to be a series tracker. I have a lot of books that are in a series where I'm either continuing on with it or I've decided to stop it. Sometimes I don't know when I start books that they are in a series or pay attention to when the next book comes out. So I'm hoping that this will allow me to have a little bit more consistency at finishing out series this year. So I'm going to go ahead and set up a series tracker where I'll have the title of the series. I'm going to have a column with an X for if I've decided to discontinue the series. And then I'm just going to do 1 through 10, where I can draw in boxes for if the book is available and then color it in when it's read. So if it's a duology, for example, and there's 2 books already out, I'll draw out 2 boxes and then I'll color them in as I've read them. For a series that's longer than 10, I'm just going to continue it down to the next row. So I'll have the first row be the 1 through 10 and then 11 through 20 and etc. I thought that would be a better use of space because I don't have a lot of series, I believe, that are more than 10 to go across and use the 2 pages that way. But I do have a lot of series that I start and I, again, have decided not to finish it, or I do have a book left. So I wanted to have more space to write out distinct number of series. So here I've got the start to my series tracker. Again, I'll list out the title. I'll fill in boxes for however many books there happen to be in that series. And then this column will just be filled in if I decide to stop reading a series. And again, it'll be an interesting thing to keep track of this year and see how many series that I can finish, and also just make sure that I'm not waiting too long between reading books to where I might forget where I was at in that particular series. My next spread that I have is a subscription box tracker. If you've been watching some of my monthly wrap-ups, you'll see that this year I've been trying to get through some backlist books that I have from different book subscriptions. I have a couple right now, so I have Book of the Month, I have Fairy Loot, I have Owl Crate, and I have Everlight. So I want to get through and read half of the books that come in those boxes this year. So some are monthly, some like Book of the Month I can select, some are quarterly. So they do come at different periods of time. And I just want to make sure that I'm reading the books. Because if I'm not reading them, then why on earth am I still going through with that subscription? And this might lead me to getting rid of some subscriptions. I also, over this past year, wound up having a lot of duplicate books between different boxes. So I thought that this would be a nice way to check that too, to go ahead and see, where am I getting a lot of the same books? Is there a pattern to it? Do I need to, again, start paying more attention or skipping, or like with Book of the Month, picking different books? So this is going to be a very simple spread where I will have the title, I will have a space to write down the subscription box that it comes from, and then a little square to mark off if I've read that book. So here I have, again, really simple layout for it with my different columns to be able to fill that out. There's some imperfections in this, so even using the ruler, because my hand is shaking more than normal, this would normally bother me a lot. Again, I'm just trying to give myself some permission to have some imperfections with this. A journal really should support your reading life, not become another task, another thing to worry about being exactly perfect. And I am trying really hard to get over some of my perfectionist tendencies. At a later point, I'm going to go through and I might shade every other line. I don't want to draw lines across this. I think that would be too busy. But if I think it might be a little funky trying to keep track of what line everything's on, I might just go and use a Tombow marker to highlight every other line, just to make it a little bit more distinct. The next spread I want to do is my daily reading challenge tracker. So I do like to have a grid with all of the days and months so that I can color in a square for every day that I at least did a little bit of reading. So here I have my completed reading challenge grid. After I go in and erase the pencil marks, I'll use a black Tombow marker to fill in any of the grids where that day doesn't happen to appear for that month. And then again, I'll color in every square for the days that I've read. This is the spread that really made me want to get this reading journal done so that I can start tracking for January, even if I wasn't ready to do all of the different decorations in here yet. Because otherwise I'm needing to create a list on my phone and try to keep track, and that just gets really messy. I do color coordinate the daily reading challenge with the color that I use to fill in the star ratings for each month. So whatever color I go with for January would be in my January spreads, filling in my star stamp for how many stars I gave that book. So the next spread I have, which is a new one for me again, is a book bingo board. Again, it's something that I saw a lot of people doing the past 2 years that I've been watching a lot more booktube videos, and I thought it would be a fun way of incorporating some different reading goals and some other fun kinds of projects, and try to fill in my whole board. So again, I'm going to go through, outline, fill it out, and then I'll tell you what all of my bingo squares are and why I went with those. So here I have my book bingo. I'm going to attempt to fill in every category. You'll see as I go through them that some of them can fall into multiple pieces. So I want to read 10 books from my physical TBR that I already own. I would like to read a book for each season in that season. So a book based in winter, in winter. I'd like to read 5 book club books. So I'm in a lot of communities that are also doing book clubs online and at work. And I think it'd be really fun to be reading more books where I can talk to people live about that book. So that's something I want to try this year. I'd like to read 12 nonfiction books. These could be memoirs, these could be more academic. I've got a whole bunch of nonfiction books, and I just really want to get back into reading more of those. I'd like to complete 5 book-related crafts, so some kind of craft that really ties directly into the story. So that could be mirroring something that one of the characters was doing. So if someone was doing embroidery, then I do an embroidery project. or it could be making something that is prominent in a book. So if there was, say, like a piece of jewelry that one of the characters was wearing, I could go ahead and make that piece of jewelry. And this is one of the ones, along with another one that's more project-based, that I thought would be fun to film also. I'd like to read 30 days in a row. I'd like to read 3 books for work or learning purposes and read them completely. For work, I do tend to read portions of books and not finish the whole thing. So this is going to push me to not just read the selected chapters that might apply to what I'm trying to learn, but actually go through and finish that whole book. I'd like to read 5 backlist book subscription picks. So some of the books that I have on my shelf from the previous 2 years that I've had some of these book subscriptions. I'd like to read all across 5 different genres at least. I do have a tendency to read a lot of books in one genre together, and then I get burnt out on it. So, for example, I really like mystery thriller books as a way of sort of turning my brain off in a sense. You know, they're just sort of fun, cozy reads for me. I like trying to figure out who did it, if it's a book that is solvable. But if I read too many of them in a row, it just feels really predictable, and then I'm not enjoying the book as much as I could. So I'd like to read across at least 5 different genres. I'd like to read 12 books from Kindle Unlimited. So that's another subscription I have. I think honestly 24 books in a year is more of what would make a KU subscription actually worth it to me financially, but at least 12 books I'd like to read this year. You know, that's feels realistic. It's 1 a month if I were to spread it out. I'd like to make 5 food items from books. So again, if there's a recipe in that book, or even if it's just they're talking about a certain type of cake, maybe I'll go ahead and make that. I'd like to read 10 books from my Kindle TBR. I have a lot of books on there that have been on for various lengths of time, and I'd like to start getting through some of those. My middle square, which feels like it should be a freebie, is to read 52 books. So that is my yearly goal. Again, works out to a book a week. This year I passed that, and I had some months where I only read 1 or 2 books in the entire month. So this feels very doable, doesn't feel like I'm going to be rushing to do it. I'd like to finish or catch up on 3 series, so not counting ones that I am DNFing, but a series that I actually want to continue reading, finish it if all of the books are out, or catch up if there's, you know, maybe some books that aren't going to be available in 2026. So at least get to that point. For fun, I would like to do a blind pick for 5 books. So that could be something like a spinner wheel or a random number generator to find a shelf and book location. But something that just completely takes the selection of the book out of my hands. I thought that that would be really fun when I'm stuck where I need to pick another book because I want to read, but I'm really not sure what I'm in the mood for. So I can go off to that. My next one is to read 6 classics. As part of my work, I do a lot of work that would fall more in the nonfiction kind of category, but I also do some research related to some digital humanities projects. I enjoy some classics through that, and there are different areas like Gothic literature that I would like to read more. And so I'm pushing myself this year to fully read 6 classics. And 6 classics that are new to me. So no rereads for this, but it could be something where I might have only read a portion of that classic before. So in a literature class as part of my undergrad, I had some, Norton anthologies, and sometimes we were assigned portions of text and not read the whole thing. So that would be something I could count in here if I went and read it and I had never read it before. I would like to read 3 books in similar settings to the book. Again, thought that sounded fun, similar to the book in Matching Seasons. So this could be reading a book on a beach of some sort, so lake or ocean, if it's a beach-related book. I'd like to read 5 books that are over 400 pages. I'd like to read 5 graphic novels. I do have some that I have not read yet and others that I'm interested in. So I'd like to give myself permission to go through those and read them. I'd like to read 5 books that I got from the library. So something I don't already own. I've been using my Libby app more this year, and so it's something that I'd like to continue. Especially for a book that I'm not positive if I'm going to want to purchase. Also, something new that I want to try this year is to complete 2 reading challenges. I'm not sure which reading challenges I want to do yet, but they always look so fun when I watch people doing their videos on it. So I'd like to give that a try and complete 2 of them. Next one I've talked about on previous spread, I'd like to read 50% of my book subscription picks that come in this year. I would like to finish a book in 1 day. Another new thing for me this year is I'd like to read 5 audiobooks. With my injury and some of my pain the past 2 months, I've read a lot more audiobooks than I normally do. Usually I save those for just a couple of books where I really enjoy, say, like the accent of the narrator. Otherwise, I'm not always that huge into audiobooks. I prefer to read physical books. I just feel like I get a lot more from it. But it's been really nice having something where I can still be reading while I'm trying to work on something, or sitting and healing, or in like an acupuncture appointment where it's physically difficult to be flipping pages or even switching on a Kindle. So I'd like to read 5 audiobooks this year. And then my last one is I'd like to read 5 books under 300 pages. So getting through some of the shorter books. So again, you can see that some of these could combine. So I could read 5 audio books and one of them be a nonfiction book, which would also count towards the 5 genres. So certainly options for overlap between these. And for some of them, I'm going to just keep tally of every time I've met it on the little squares at the bottom. So I can kind of keep track as I'm going through which of these I have completed. So the next 2 pages I want to hold for the reading challenges. So again, I'd like to do 2 reading challenges throughout this year. And I'm really not sure which reading challenges I'd like to do yet. So I'm saving this space to go ahead and put in any of the information for challenge 1 and for challenge 2. Again, I'd love to know in the comments what reading challenges you're doing this year or that you've done in the past and really enjoyed. I want something that doesn't feel too difficult to complete, because this is something that I'm trying new. I might do 1 year-long one and one that's more seasonal. So again, give me some ideas of reading challenges that you think would be fun, especially if there's challenges that you think would pair nicely with my book bingo categories. And then the final section is again going to be a placeholder. And this is going to be for my end of year reading stats. So there are different things that I want to track. I'd like to track the total number of books I read per month. I'd like to track overall throughout the year how many books I read, audio, ebook, or physical. I'd also like to come up with some different average reading breakdowns. So the average reading that I gave for books per month for different genres. And again, I know that genres sometimes got a little messy where a book might fall into multiple genres. So I'll just have to pull whatever the primary one is that it seems. But going ahead and tracking all of that. So that's where this will go at the end of the year. And then the next page is going to start my monthly spreads. So I'm going to start just with the title, but what I like to do for books in my log is to print out a picture of the cover of the book. I have a date stamp that I use to mark the date that I finished reading it. And I also have a star stamp. In the past, I used to draw in 5 boxes for every book. But I do have a stamp that I want to try using this year, and I'll color in the stars for what the rating is. And then I usually write just a sentence or two about it. So kind of my top layer thoughts. My reading wrap-ups, I've gone into more detail in a way of some of the books, but this is a space where if there's a spoiler-related thing that I want to remember, so something that had a really good twist or something that was super predictable, those are the sorts of things that I note in here just so that I can kind of remember a little bit more about that book. So this is the foundation of my 2026 reading journal. Again, pretty simple, flexible, designed to actually get used. And hopefully I'll feel up to going back in and adding some different decorations. So I'm really hoping I'll add little touches over time. Definitely color as I go through. I consistently like to use Tombow markers to highlight different pieces, but I might add in some stickers or tape, and adding in pictures of books. But this is starting with a clean, functional base. I can let it evolve naturally as the year goes on, and I've got something that I can use now, which is really the most important piece. If you're setting up your own reading journal, I hope this reminded you that it doesn't have to be complicated or perfect. The best journal is one that you're actually going to keep coming back to. Let me know in the comments if you keep a reading journal and whether you lean more minimal. And this is way more minimal than I normally go with. So do you go with this or this with just a little bit of color? Or are you the sort that likes to create really pretty reading journals with lots of collage and decorations? I always love watching those videos, but it's never 100% felt like me to go to that level. So I'd love to hear how you track your reading. Again, if you're interested in seeing how I end up decorating it, if you'd like to see something as a mid-year checkpoint for any of these, let me know in the comments, or I can do an end-of-year flip through, kind of give you an idea of how I ended up using each of these pages. And again, I'd love to know any suggestions you have for how you like to color books on the bookshelfy pages, as well as reading challenges that you think would be really fun to do. So thank you for joining me while I set up this reading journal template, and I'll see you in my next video.